Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and today we're looking at a game named Haiti. This is a 2016 game that is going to be an interesting contrast to a game I just played called The Vagrant The Vagrant had a medieval fantasy look to it where the main character was in bikini armor, leather bikini the whole time, and it was just never mentioned and really played no role. And in Haiti, as you can see on the right, you have a robot that has a lot of junk in the trunk and quite a big amount of cleavage, or well, not cleavage, or just breast size in general, while also being part robot and not even showing the head face of the character. And it is my understanding that this character was designed this way because that's what the artist and creator of the game wanted to make the character look like. It is a platformer, over-the-shoulder, third-person game, which is going to be slightly different than The Vagrant, which was a somewhat platformer, flat 2D game. So we're getting into what could have been described in an alternate universe as exploitation video games, but the problem with using the word exploitation in an art form like video games is that there are no humans and there are no class of humans that really are being exploited in video games. A video game character is effectively a puppet. It has no autonomy, it has no personhood, it has no rights. So unlike an exploitation movie where you would hire say African American people or some other minority and then have them paid less to make a bad movie that portrayed their race in a bad light, making them act as pimps or prostitutes or drug dealers, which frankly that's still fairly common even today in TV and movies. The difference there is that those were real actors and they were representing real races or real minorities of some sort. You could hire poor people and underpay them. The only real exploitation that really should be mentioned in video games is actually the programmers and the animators and the writers. All the employees, all the associate level, lower level employees are getting exploited by the managers and the publication companies that are underpaying and severely overworking the people. And a lot of times it's not even that they're underpaid. A lot of them get paid quite well, but then they're severely overworked, working 60 to 80 hours a week. So at a certain point, there could have been this genre of games, but nobody ever uses that phrase, and for good reason. So I guess I probably need to lean more on calling these lewd games or just extra lewd games. Now, in the case of Haiti, if I can click on the actual screen to get the controller. Nope, that's not the problem. The problem is that the analog stick doesn't work. There is a controller here, but you have to use the D-pad to set the settings. In the case of Haiti, there is a built-in sensor that is on by default. So if I was just playing this game for myself and not trying to be a video game critic and put the footage on YouTube, I would probably turn this off. And so there is actual real nudity in this game, whereas in comparison to The Vagrant, there isn't any of that. And that's one of the problems with The Vagrant, certainly, is that you go through 20 plus hours of gameplay. It felt like 20 plus hours just seeing a bikini, and it just became so commonplace and so pointless. It wasn't exploitative enough, where this game seems to be willing to actually offer that. On top of that, since it's a video game, and most forms of art, theatrical type arts, theater, TV, movies, have characters change their costume. So in that, right at the beginning here, there is an outfit that at the moment we can't change, but clearly at some point we are going to have at least one other outfit that you can mix and match between the outfit, the hands, and the head. And certainly when we look at the outfit, you also have to point out that in animation, and usually I see this mostly in anime, there are some animators who can do a really, really good job of making an outfit so tight and so magically glued towards undersides of the boobs so that even when they shift, they effectively look like they are nude because the clothes is basically glued to every single angle. There is no drooping of the cloth. There's nothing like that. In fact, when you look at this outfit even as it is, the outfit fairly quickly at the top stops feeling like a soft fabric and looks much more like a rigid piece of plastic, and then it transitions into a soft fabric when you hit the breasts and the stomach. So yeah, is there any more setup for this game compared to the Vagrant? And this is really the reason why I'm playing this game. This game says it also has 6 sections, and it says it's going to be fairly hard and it's not going to get any easier. So on that, we will probably want to play softcore, because hardcore may mean that you die and then you have to start over at the beginning. There are no checkpoints in this game. You have to save at save spots. At a certain level, you have to probably admit that this game is a what would have been considered close to a low effort asset flip, but somehow jumped over being that by popularity to be slightly more of a game. But I'm not really expecting a lot from it. You really shouldn't expect a lot from it, since it's selling itself mostly on this character. It seems like our character is a robot because it says in the corner, system restart, searching for master found, restoring active configuration, uploading room scheme not changed, cleanup, items reset, spawning, initiating something, can't even really read it, startup. I'm still reading games from on the TV 10 feet away and the text gets too small and too difficult. So it looks like Haydee is a robot and not just a human with maybe cybernetic arms, and a helmet over her head. So, yeah. You'd almost certainly assume that you would design robots like this at some point to be sex bots, but that doesn't inherently mean that's what this is, because that could just become the standard place. Now, most of the time, you are going to have this third person over the shoulder perspective, so seeing the back of the head, particularly if those blue lights are life bars or energy bars, is actually very helpful and something that you would have stolen from Dead Space. Let's see, interesting. A jumps. We're in shadow, so we'll look at that. There's padding here at the bottom, so we're not getting just like full-on moose knuckle, is one of the phrases. I wonder if the sensor would change that. Also, for such like a tight latex outfit, we're also not seeing any nipples pointing through the chest. That sensor might be changing that also. Man. So A is jump. X seems to be nothing. does seem like some things can be interacted with. B lets you crouch down, and I don't know if this is supposed to be a stealth pose or if this is just all up in that butt pose. You can see there's a vent on the back of her outfit that looks like hard plastic. You can see there's just a slight difference there. A oddly brings you out of the crouch pose. So on the back here, it does seem like there's a fairly obvious difference as far as the hard plastic and the fabric, but on the front, the transition is mostly in shadow and hard to see. I wouldn't have expected A to be up, always B to be down. Let's see. Yep. Looking at the back. X seems to be nothing. Y seems to be nothing at the moment. We don't have any weapons though, of course. Left trigger seems to be peer down pose. Almost certainly this is asset flipped. Like almost everything here is. But you can't really go the category of calling it an asset flip if they actually put a whole game on it, and so really you would just call it pre-purchased assets. But I imagine these pipes, these tile textures, the legs, the torso, the robotic arms, even the fact that this is almost certainly cut and paste between 3 or 4 different characters really gets away from the idea of an asset flip. Nearly every other day on Steam, in the adult section of Steam, which nobody really visits, there are true asset flips that just have a naked 3D model of a lady or a man, and they've done nothing to it. They haven't changed the appearance, and they just use it to try and sell a garbage game. Alright, so we have an object interaction highlight, and I guess X worked for that. So we're doing a little tutorial. What is interesting here is this is presenting kind of a master class. Well, that has no physics on it at all, so you're just clipping through there. This is presenting a masterclass on what other animators have to actively do to censor a game for their own taste, for their own desires, or at the demands of ratings boards or governments that actually would, like, technically legally be censoring things. This game also has an editor that launches with it, which is unique, certainly. I wish I could turn off the reticle. That would be the only thing I would potentially want to do. It should also say the settings, as far as turning all of these up to high and very high, did not set themselves up. And by default, vertical sync was off. I think for recording, that's fine for me. For actual gameplay, your mileage varies on whether you like it or not. You could potentially, I guess, change the zooms out a little bit, but that seems to be for gameplay, not just to see the backside of characters. You do have just this camera this whole time. So, like, I recently played Resident Evil 4. There's a point where you have the Ada Wong climb a ladder, and she does a one-handed forward flip onto the platforms that she climbs because she's wearing this red dress, and there's just like not she's wearing a red Chinese dress, and there's just really not a way. I'm gonna cough 1 second. Sorry about that. You didn't really want to hear me halfway through a cough this whole time. But yeah, she's wearing this red Chinese dress that's really tight, and there'd just not really be a way for her to climb up in this more natural state, which I'm not sure that you'd even say this is a natural state, because basically her toes are not touching the wall. From behind, you don't really notice it, but they didn't quite get the pixels quite right. That being said, they're not doing a terrible job with the hands grabbing the ledge, but the thumbs are clipping through. And that's where a AAA game would potentially have a better engine that would address that, or better animations to address that. Although these high heel shoes that this robot is wearing really wouldn't get any kind of purchase on a wall anyways, so she would effectively just be holding herself up with her robotic arms, which is very believable. You can see there is very much a jiggle that's happening, the simulation of just bouncing about, breathing, movement. So it's just not a static image. But yeah, generally in a game, when any character is climbing, they either put a ladder and you don't just pull yourself up, and then there's a completely different animation. And often when there's a ladder, they put the animation somewhat zoomed out and somewhat angled, not straight on, and definitely not from the base. They come higher up to avoid showing upskirt shots of people wearing skirts, or just showing butts in general. But certainly that's not what's happening here as I press A. And frankly, this is a pretty natural way in which you would climb if you were particularly top heavy and had to climb, is that you would have to grab the ledge, you'd have to push up with your feet. There's nothing particularly sensational about this. You would have to potentially flop and try and shift your center of gravity as forward as possible, and generally you would do this in a very fast motion too to maintain momentum. You can see the hands look like now they are fully on the surface, and the thighs maybe are clipping a little bit into the section, the corner. But yeah, you definitely could see more of an action game where instead it would have been a forward flip of two hands real fast, or it would have been some kind of climbing on not smooth walls, so you could get more of a wall rock climbing animation. And at a certain point, if this is the medium as an artist you want to depict, to make every pose your masterpiece, like to really focus on depicting it as much as possible, is admirable. Like, I want to see artists have freedom of creation, and so if they are obsessed about showing butts, I applaud there being one person out there, one indie game developer, willing to do this, particularly in a culture where there are a lot of, and then A gets her knees up, and that's all one animation there. There are a lot of social justice warriors is the phrase that I often use, but armchair feminist might be a great one to say to. A lot of people that complain about how particularly women are visually depicted, or female looking artificial intelligence characters like this virtual animation here. A lot of people complain about that for not really a good reason. Like, Because again, this isn't a real human. It doesn't have real rights. So if the artist wants to draw a picture, whether it's a stick man or a highly detailed 3D model of that looks like a woman, it's still not a real being with personhood or rights. So why these armchair feminists complain about that? It's mostly for clickbait. It's mostly to make themselves feel like they're doing something. Meanwhile, these armchair feminists, social justice warriors, inherently don't do anything or even try to do anything about real women being abused in the real world, in the world, or even in their own backyards. Instead, they're just obsessed with this. At a certain point, maybe they could make an argument that that games were creating a culture of depicting women in a way that's inappropriate, but who defines what inappropriate is? Like, there are plenty of women I have seen that have been... Ooh, you can, if you're on the edge, back out so we can see that animation one more time. There are plenty of women who wear one-piece bikinis in beaches. So this is not something that you would be out of the ordinary. The one-piece white bikini wouldn't be out of the ordinary. And if you were going to a cosplay convention and you were cosplaying this character, this outfit really wouldn't be that weird or extreme. I will say it's kind of interesting that there's little hints of details in the skin tone too. Like there's some digital noise has been added to the pigmentation. There's definitely a situation in drawing this skin that could have led to it all being very monotone one color, and it would have looked unnatural, where this comes off fairly natural. And I wonder if there's some lighting there. You can see on the back of her ankles there's some different pigmentation there. I wonder if we're going to potentially see battle damage and cuts and bleeding when she gets hit. I don't know. Honestly, I think this game is probably closer to a one-hit kill. So, if anything, this might also be a game where... Oops. We got an achievement for falling to our death. We can see that there's a bunch of other things. Although, it may have taken a while for her to really shut down there. And I guess softcore just means straight up start again. That's not much, though. We can certainly move fairly quickly. So this really could have been a game just like Portal, with puzzles and very little conflict. Guess we run and jump, and that was the trick there. And I don't think our body is still there. Generally, I'm going to try and not go into many like major anti-SJW rants, though, and let's just have fun with the game. If you're here for fun, good. If you're not here for fun, well, you're not going to have fun. Interesting, the right stick shifts from the left perspective to the right perspective. That's something that doesn't happen in most games. Usually you have to toggle that in the menu, even if it is an option, which is probably a better place to place it. I am uncertain what this is. It looks like it's a chest piece, but I don't know if that means that's some kind of body armor or some kind of different outfit that with just a slightly different collar. Hmm. The fact that there's no face being depicted at all, not even like an electric smiley face, I think is a little weird. Here we can see as you sidle up here, the boobs are bouncing. I don't feel like that's particularly that odd or out of what would normally happen, depending on the size of your boobs. If you're not wearing a bra, they would probably bounce quite a bit, even just going left and right, climbing. I am hoping that this game gives me an opportunity to save before I do start getting attacked. So very often we see in games these kind of transitional places where you have to crawl from one area to another. Usually that is done to hide a load, but in most games they also spend a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of animation effort to make the way they crawl through a hole look completely more animated and very different from the way the characters play normally. In like Tomb Raider games, when she's crawling through cracks in a row, they have her turn sideways when you really cannot walk sideways in the game at all. They have every single move scripted and animated like a movie instead of being more procedurally generated based on the inputs of a controller. Very much they are not trying to get all up in the butt of characters. But that would be fairly natural by default. There's an untold number of tricks that are being played by the scripted camera angles in most games. And most of the time it's done for very logical, obvious reasons that the camera left to its own devices would just not center in the direction you would want the camera to be, but sometimes it is a trick that moves away from the camera, moves away from seeing a boob, seeing a butt, seeing a skirt, even if that is a very natural thing. Okay. So we got a key. So the point here, I guess, would be to point yourself back this way and then work your way around. This effectively is a lot of what Tomb Raider was, the Tomb Raider reboot and even the original Tomb Raider games. Just a lot of generally climbing around. There probably is some room for some scripted turning around. When I press B here, if I was facing this way, it probably should just automatically align. I also wonder how much of a fall is too much of a fall. So I had to hit A on the D-pad. Alright. So now A is a body armor. So you are getting perhaps a little bit less bounce and jiggle, but it's not a full outfit and it doesn't change the color. There is something somewhat weird about the direction this character is designed in that if she really was supposed to be a like sex robot, most people will want some kind of face. Even now, the real dolls that are very uncanny valley have faces, even though the faces often do not really look good. So I would see, like, I would think you'd want to have like a hologram projector on the helmet here to show a face. And so I could see that potentially just glitching at the beginning of the game if you didn't want to animate that. Or I could see digital LEDs with a smiley face on it. Something to pass some emotion. The way she is depicted here really makes her feel more like a worker robot or a combat robot. Let's see. So there is a panel that can be opened over there. We'll have to come back for that. And honestly, it is fairly believable that you could have sex robots that are designed in bulk for the general public, and then eventually companies and corporations retrofit them to be workers in a factory or military. So it seems like it's one general key per lock, and then not particularly a specific key per lock. So I could have just unlocked this door and not gotten this chest piece armor, which maybe that saves me one shot, maybe that saves me several shots. I'm not 100% happy with the D-pad input in the lower left hand corner saying 1, 2, 3, 4. That's fine if you're playing with a keyboard, but as soon as I push up on an Xbox controller, which is what I'm playing with, or any controller, it should swap out that prompt to up, down, left, right arrows. Alright. Yeah, it doesn't seem like I could reach that. Unless I'm supposed to jump down. Well, let's get a good perspective on what we're supposed to do. Are these safe? Is this gonna safely catch me? Or should I work my way downward? Oh, I guess it really wasn't that far. But it's not high enough to really hit it either. And this is locked. Interesting. So this is a chest item. I can't grab this ledge, which is interesting as far as what ledges could be grabbed and which ledges can't. Alright, so let's just run and jump in, see if we can hit it. There is an interesting extra animation we haven't seen so far, which does have you falling forward and potentially hitting your whole head through the wall. I guess we're just coming back. And I just don't see a reason why you would ever have the chest protector not equipped. Also doesn't feel like you can really get into an inventory screen. Well, I guess you can. Let's see. So you can drop things. This all feels a little Resident Evil in its gameplay design, and it seems like we're going to end up cycling back several places in comparison to like Portal. Portal 1. This game feels very much like it's already breaking from the confines of its space. So that time when it climbed up into a crouch, and it's just so dark here. There might have been another path, but I guess not. But when you fall, it doesn't uncrouch you. So now we have a screwdriver. And this light source is here to point us to the screwdriver, so it's not the same as this button. Although, honestly, they don't look different enough. Honestly, there probably should be like a yellow or red tinge to the button, and I know that would hurt your visual aesthetics somewhat, but I do think it's probably better. Right. So the screwdriver that time did not lose any usages. So it's not a one screwdriver per one vent. So this took us back behind this, and screwdriver does not work on that. And there is a square door that we're going to have to eventually get a better look at in the light. Just walking forward, you don't get down there. I can't help but see a comparison here to the amount of compromised situations in which you're seeing the butt of this character. Have we even been in this room? I don't think we have. And horror games, like, and frankly, it used to be just the standard operating fare where a horror game or anything that was less than a prestigious movie would want at least one nudity topless scene or sex scene in it. Even like the movie Titanic, you have a topless scene, and that was some, so for lack of a more nuanced phrase, that was some pervert somewhere saying, hey, let's add this. And that used to be the way games were, not games, but movies were sold, is that the rental market, this would have been the only place you could have gotten a little bit of nudity without going straight to usually the edge of a city to some creepy porn adult shop to buy real porn. Of course, the internet changes all of that quite a bit. Okay. So we saved, and it looks to me like the save disks and saves are reusable. I thought it may be a case where it was one disk per save, and so we may very well run into a situation where you have to find the save disk first. This is using up our inventory slots, certainly. Yep. I kind of don't agree with the idea of this game not landing and standing back up. Like, when you crawl out of a vent, you do stay standing if you were standing before. But that is certainly a small decision. I suspect this is going to be dangerous. It does kind of feel like you could just drop down this area. I don't know if that's not just the area, though, I had already been. I wish there was kind of a map button, but nope. No, this feels like a jump. It also feels like I've potentially see, there's a path that way, and there seems to be a path this way. I guess the question is, can you do a backwards jump? Doesn't seem like you can, because holding back and pressing A is not doing anything. And the game hasn't really trained me to be able to do that. And jumping over that rail seems undoable, so I suspect I'm supposed to jump this way, and then maybe that's going to fall over like a gate. Or like a bridge. Yeah, compared to the Vagrant, at least this game is doing what it kind of promised. Like, the Vagrant really sells itself with a lot of images. Well, that didn't make a bridge, but it did move or just disappear the item. Didn't really feel like there was a lot of animation around that. Okay, now what? Yeah. Had the story been 100% serious in the Vagrant, and then you just got poses that were never mentioned, I would have been somewhat satisfied with that idea. Guess you generally want to be in the center here in case you miss this jump. One thing that they could have worked on here too, and they are working on a Haiti 2, which is actually going to put a head on the character and try and make it more of a humanoid type character instead of just a robot. one thing they could do though is if you're crouched down and you press B, just inching downward, probably inching backwards, not downward, probably would be helpful. So if you are in this mode, pressing B should just inch you backwards if you're a little too far away, like this, instead of just B doing nothing. Also, you can see our health bar is indicated with this blue circle. So then, I guess the question will come down to can we refill our health bar, or do we refill that by saving? This whole direction that we went basically was a side area. Alright. Let's see. Alright, that's a problem, certainly. So I definitely won't want to do new names each time, because then I'd have to grab my keyboard. Alright. So saving doesn't seem like it refills your health, and yeah, in the description of the game it did say use medkits. Like this game is kind of an abrupt game in the way it describes itself. So I have no idea how long this game is, but generally thinking it's probably not that long. And so finding a safe spot now after getting some bullets, which is what I think those are, is probably a good spot. I can't imagine that this is going to be much longer than the length of the first Portal game. 4 or 5 hours at most, possibly a lot less than that, because the puzzling and the platforming here is you're going to run out of ideas fairly quickly unless you introduce more gameplay mechanics. In Portal, certainly that's the portal guns and the elevators and the energy balls and just a lot of different elements that you have to work with. If we don't have a lot of things like that in this game, then just climbing up and down is going to lose its appeal. And certainly that could be a big problem with a game like this in general, is that if we're not getting different costumes to spice it up in the actual playthrough, and costumes are instead unlocked through beating the game, I don't know how many people would want to play the game all the way through twice just to unlock a different costume. But yeah, also, we know at some point we're going to start getting shot by robots, so the back half of this game very possibly is going to be a very different experience from the front half of this game. But yeah, I can't imagine that there would be much more you could add to this game to spice things up. The type of battle damage and the animations, if you got really ambitious, certainly could be different, since there's such an emphasis on the butt. If you had robots, for instance, with like whips or something that were hitting the butt cheeks directly and targeting them, and then you're seeing like welt up, and then that would be your health bar, that would be very different, something that might appeal to the BDSM community somewhat, but I doubt that's what's going to happen here. It would probably be more average or normal to have the costume itself start to tear through battle damage and then expose a little bit of the belly of the back. You could certainly go gory with it and have bullet holes come in and out and see bits of blood, or maybe white machine liquid oozing out through bullet holes. Um, I definitely wouldn't assume that there's some kind of deep theory behind this game that the robots that attack you are going to represent male oppressors, and that Haydee is representing the ideal feminine form, um, and motherhood and things like that. That would be probably way too high-minded for what this game actually is. Certainly, you could try to make that argument, but it would really fall shallow and flat as an argument. Um, Certainly, that was the case with a lot of the Roman sculptures at this point. That's how we describe a lot of female forms being depicted in the Roman sculptures that we still see today, when honestly those sculptures probably were just rich men's playthings that were put in gardens of rich Romans for them to ogle at. But with history, we usually do ascribe a much higher meaning to things that really didn't have high-level, high-minded meaning, and were just base instinct objects of delight. And so I think it's very appropriate to just come out and admit it, that Haiti, as a character here, is a base object of delight for people to look at. And not just men, certainly, even though a lot of feminists will not realize or not admit that there are also women who like to look at butts and breasts too. The female form is fairly attractive to most people: straight women, lesbian women, straight men. Gay men, maybe not super attracted to the female form, but I certainly have heard of gay men preferring to go to female strip clubs over male strip clubs. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling on, and so let's end this recording here. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and give me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.